The emergency klaxon screamed through the bridge of the UES Defiance as Commander Sarah Chen gripped the armrests of her captain's chair. Through the massive viewport, she watched the last remnants of humanity's fleet being torn apart by alien weaponry that turned starships into clouds of glowing debris. "Ma'am, we've lost the Valkyrie and the Prometheus," reported Lieutenant Torres, his voice cracking as he watched 2 more ships vanish from his tactical display. "That leaves us with just 12 vessels against their entire armada." Sarah's jaw tightened. 12 ships against the Kethvar Empire's invasion fleet of over 300 massive warships. The odds were beyond hopeless. They were catastrophic. The Kethvar had appeared 6 months ago, emerging from the depths of space, with technology that made humanity's best weapons look like stone clubs. Their ships were living things, biomechanical monstrosities that could regenerate damage and adapt to human tactics in real time. Their plasma cannons could melt through the strongest earth alloys like butter, and their fighters moved with an intelligence that suggested they weren't piloted at all but were somehow alive. "Commander, incoming transmission from the Kethvar flagship," announced Communications Officer Park. It's Admiral Vextai himself." The main screen flickered, and suddenly Sarah found herself staring into the face of humanity's destroyer. Admiral Vextai was tall and angular, with obsidian black skin that seemed to absorb light itself. His forearms moved with fluid grace, and his large, multifaceted eyes reflected the burning wreckage of human ships. "Commander Chen." Vextai's voice was like grinding metal transmitted through universal translators. "Your species has fought admirably, but this ends now. Surrender, and I will grant your people a swift extinction. Continue to resist, and we will harvest your world slowly, keeping your kind alive to serve as entertainment." Sarah stood from her chair, her uniform crisp despite the chaos around her. At 34, she had never expected to be humanity's last line of defense. She had been a xenoarchaeologist before the war, studying ancient alien ruins. Now she commanded one of the few remaining ships of the Terran Defense Force. "Admiral Vextai," she said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. "Humanity doesn't know the meaning of surrender. We've been fighting for survival since we first crawled out of the caves. You want Earth? You'll have to take it from our cold, dead hands." The alien's expression, if it could be called that, seemed amused. "As you wish, Primitive. Your homeworld will burn within the hour." The transmission cut, and Sarah turned to her crew. These brave souls had followed her through hell itself. Lieutenant Torres, barely 22, who had lost his entire family when the Kethvar glassed Mars. Engineer Novak, whose quick thinking had kept them alive through a dozen impossible battles. Dr. Elena Vasquez, their xenobiologist, who had been studying the alien technology, searching desperately for some weakness they could exploit. "Ma'am," Torres said quietly, "what are your orders?" Sarah looked out at the Kethvar fleet as it began to organize for the final assault on Earth. Their bioships pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, communicating in ways humanity barely understood. Soon, they would jump to Earth's solar system and finish what they had started. But something nagged at Sarah's mind. During her years as a xenoarchaeologist, she had studied the ruins of dozens of dead civilizations. Many of them had fallen to the Kethvar, but there had been anomalies, references to something called Terra's hidden arsenal in the ancient texts. Warnings written in scripts that predated human civilization by millions of years. "Set course. For Earth," she commanded. "Maximum burn. We're going home." "Ma'am, with respect, 12 ships won't make any difference," Torres protested gently. Sarah smiled grimly. "Maybe not, but I have a theory. Dr. Vasquez, remember those ancient ruins we found on Kepler 442b? The ones with the warnings about Earth?" Elena looked up from her console, her dark eyes reflecting exhaustion and hope in equal measure. "The predecessor texts. Sarah, those were written by a species that went extinct before humans even existed. They're myth and legend. Are they?" Sarah moved to the navigation console and pulled up star charts. "Look at this." Every civilization the Kethvar destroyed was warned about attacking the third world of the Yellow Star. They called it the trap that sleeps. What if Earth isn't just humanity's homeworld? What if it's something more? The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Outside, space twisted as they entered hyperspace, racing toward home and what might be humanity's final battle. 3 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, and what Sarah saw made her heart stop. The Kethvar armada was already there. Hundreds of bioships, each the size of a city, hung in formation around Earth like a deadly necklace. But the planet itself was unchanged, still blue and green and beautiful, apparently unharmed. "Why haven't they attacked?" Torres whispered. Before Sarah could answer, her communications array lit up with an incoming message. But this wasn't from the aliens. The signal was coming from Earth, specifically from deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. "This is Deep Station Alpha to any surviving Terran forces." The voice was crisp and military, with an accent Sarah couldn't place. "Please identify yourselves and prepare for authentication." Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the channel. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance. Who is this? What's Deep Station Alpha?" "Commander Chen, this is Admiral Harrison Pierce, Terran Deep Command. We've been monitoring your engagement with the Kethvar forces. Well done keeping them busy while we prepared." "Prepared for what?" Sarah demanded. "Admiral, I've never heard of Terran Deep Command. Who are you people?" There was a pause, then, "Commander, you're about to learn that humanity has been preparing for this war for a very long time. Stand by for visual contact. It's time to show these aliens what Earth is really capable of." The waters of the Pacific Ocean began to churn. Chapter 2: Awakening. Giants. Sarah stared at her display in disbelief as massive energy signatures began to emerge from the depths of Earth's oceans. What she had initially thought were underwater volcanic eruptions were something far more extraordinary. "My God," Dr. Vasquez breathed, her scientific instruments registering readings that should have been impossible. "Sarah, these aren't ships. They're something else entirely." The first structure to break the surface of the Pacific was a mountain of metal and composite materials that seemed to drink in starlight. It rose from the waters like an ancient titan awakening from slumber, water cascading from its hull in torrents that created temporary waterfalls. The thing was massive, easily 15 kilometers long and shaped like a blade pointed toward the stars. "Readings indicate it's been down there for..." Torres paused, double-checking his instruments. "Commander, this thing has been underwater for over 50,000 years. More giants began to surface. From the Atlantic emerged a vessel that looked like a crystalline cathedral, its transparent sections pulsing with energy that made nearby storm clouds dance with aurora-like light. The Indian Ocean gave birth to something that resembled a vast metallic flower, its petals opening to reveal weapon systems that hummed with barely contained power. 16, 17, 18. Elena counted as more impossibly large structures emerged from the planet's waters. Each one was unique, as if designed by a completely different species, yet they all shared one common feature: they were clearly built for war. The Kethvar fleet, which had been maintaining a stable orbit around Earth, suddenly broke formation. Sarah could see their bioships pulsing with agitated bioluminescence like a disturbed hive of insects. "Incoming transmission from the alien flagship," Parks announced. Admiral Vexthai appeared on screen again, but his previous confidence had been replaced by something Sarah had never seen in a Kethvar before: fear. "What trickery is this?" he demanded. "These vessels, they predate your civilization by millennia. How do you command the weapons of the ancients?" Before Sarah could respond, Admiral Pierce's voice cut across all channels, broadcasting to both the human survivors and the alien invaders. "But why reveal yourselves now?" Sarah asked. "You defeated the Kethvar. The war is over." Pierce's expression grew troubled. "Commander, I'm afraid the war is far from over. What you witnessed today was merely the advance scout of the Kethvar Empire. Admiral Vexthai was testing Earth's defenses with a relatively small force. The real invasion fleet is still coming." Before Sarah could respond, alarms began to sound throughout the underwater city. Pierce's wrist communicator crackled to life, with urgent voices speaking in rapid-fire technical jargon. "What is it?" Sarah demanded. Pierce's face had gone pale. "Long-range sensors have detected a massive hyperspace disturbance at the edge of the galaxy. It appears that Admiral Vexthai's retreat has triggered the arrival of the main Kethvar fleet." He turned to look at Sarah with eyes that held the weight of 50 millennia. "Commander, in approximately 72 hours, Earth will face an invasion force of over 10,000 ships led by the Kethvar Emperor himself. The 18 Guardian vessels that seemed so impressive today, they're about to face odds of nearly 600 to 1. Sarah felt the familiar chill of impossible odds, but this time it was accompanied by something new: hope. "Admiral Pierce, what do you need from us?" "Everything, Commander Chen. It's time for the two branches of humanity to become one again. The surface dwellers have something we lost long ago: the ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. The Bia, deep dwellers, have preserved power beyond imagination. Together we might just have a chance." As if summoned by their conversation, the lights of New Atlantis dimmed, and through the viewing windows, Sarah could see the Guardian fleet beginning to rise once again from their ancient resting places. But this time, she noticed something different. The massive vessels were opening compartments she hadn't seen before, revealing smaller ships by the thousands. "Those are fighter craft?" she asked. "Among other things," Pierce replied. "Commander, you're about to discover that those 18 dreadnoughts you saw were not ships at all. They were factories, weapons platforms, and command centers all in one. Each Guardian vessel contains the military might of an entire star system. The underwater city around them began to transform as well. What Sarah had taken for decorative architecture was actually transforming into obvious military installations. The coral gardens reconfigured themselves into weapons arrays, while the schools of fish revealed themselves to be sophisticated defense drones. "The Emperor is coming," Pierce said quietly. "And when he arrives, he's going to discover that Earth has been preparing for this moment for 50,000 years. Chapter 4. The Emperor's Gambit. 71 hours after the alarms first sounded in New Atlantis, the Kethvar Emperor's massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. The sight of it was enough to make even the most hardened warrior question the sanity of resistance. Sarah stood on the bridge of her ship, which was now docked inside the Guardian vessel, Leviathan, the same crystalline cathedral that had erased Kethvar ships from existence just days before. The scale of the ancient dreadnought was staggering. Her entire ship occupied what was essentially a small hangar bay, and the Leviathan itself was just one of 18 such vessels. "Final count," Torres reported, his voice tight with barely controlled terror. 11,473 Kethvar vessels. The largest of them appears to be... He paused, checking his readings again. "Commander, the Emperor's flagship is the size of a small moon." Through the Leviathan's impossible viewing systems, Sarah could see the enemy fleet organizing itself into attack formations. But what struck her most was the order and discipline of their approach. This wasn't the chaotic rush of Admiral Vexthai's advance force. This was the methodical deployment of an empire that had conquered galaxies. "Admiral Pierce," she called over the communication system. "What's our tactical situation?" Pierce's voice came back immediately, calm despite the circumstances. "All Guardian vessels are at full operational capacity for the first time in 50,000 years. Surface-based planetary defense systems are online. The combined population of the ocean cities is manning battle stations." There was a pause. "Commander, we're about to field more military power than this galaxy has seen since the fall of the predecessor confederation." Elena, who had been working with the Deep Command scientists to understand the Guardian technology, looked up from her station with eyes wide with wonder and fear. "Sarah, I'm beginning to understand what these ships really are. They're not just weapons. They're entire civilizations compressed into mobile platforms. Each Guardian vessel contains the preserved knowledge and technology of multiple extinct species." Before Sarah could respond, the space around them filled with an energy signature that made their instruments scream warnings. The Emperor's flagship, a biomechanical nightmare that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, was powering up weapon systems that registered as small stars on their sensors. "Incoming transmission," Parks announced. "It's from the Emperor himself." The main display activated, and Sarah found herself face to face with the ultimate enemy of galactic civilization. The Kethvar Emperor was ancient beyond measure, his biomechanical form a fusion of organic horror and technological supremacy. Unlike the relatively simple appearance of Admiral Vextai, the Emperor was clearly a being that had absorbed and integrated the technologies of thousands of conquered species. So, the Emperor's voice was like the death of suns, transmitted through systems that Sarah's mind couldn't fully comprehend. The guardians of the Third World finally awaken. I had wondered when I would face the last of the predecessor's children. Admiral Pierce's voice responded from the Leviathan's command center. "Emperor Keth Morak, your empire's expansion ends here. Earth stands ready to defend not just humanity, but the memory of every species you've destroyed." The Emperor's laugh was like the sound of civilizations dying. "Guardians, do you know how many last stands I have witnessed? How many species have made their final gesture of defiance before joining my empire? Your weapons are impressive, but I have had 50,000 years to study predecessor technology. I know your weaknesses." "Perhaps," Pierce replied. "But you don't know humanity's greatest strength. And what might that be?" Sarah stepped forward, speaking for the first time to the destroyer of civilizations. "We don't know when to quit." The Emperor's multifaceted eyes focused on her with sudden interest. "Ah, a surface dweller. You are the ones who developed independently, while your cousins waited beneath the waves. How quaint. Tell me, Primitive, what can your crude technology offer against the might of an empire that spans galaxies?" Sarah smiled grimly. "Let me show you." At her signal, the space around Earth began to fill with ships that shouldn't have existed. Every orbital platform, asteroid mining station, and deep space facility that humanity had built over the past century suddenly revealed hidden weapon systems. More importantly, the asteroids themselves began to move, revealing that humanity had been weaponizing space rocks for decades. Surface humanity has been preparing for alien invasion since we first looked up at the stars, Sarah announced. We just never expected the invasion to be this big. But the Emperor's response was swift and devastating. His fleet opened fire with weapons that turned space itself into a killing field. Bioships launched living projectiles that grew larger as they traveled, while energy weapons carved through the void like the claws of angry gods. The Guardian fleet met them with technologies that bent reality. Space folded around the ancient Dreadnoughts as they moved through dimensions that human language had no words for. The flower-like vessel from the Indian Ocean bloomed again, but this time it birthed not one artificial star, but dozens, each one tuned to disrupt different aspects of Kethvar biotechnology. The battle that followed lasted for 18 hours and ranged across the entire solar system. Sarah watched in awe as the moons of Jupiter became weapons platforms, while Saturn's rings revealed themselves to be an enormous defensive array. Mars, thought to be a dead world, opened up to reveal manufacturing facilities that had been building weapons for the Deep Command for millennia. But the most shocking moment came when Earth itself began to transform. The continents shifted slightly, revealing massive weapon systems that had been hidden beneath the planet's crust. Mountain ranges opened up to expose laser batteries that could reach across interplanetary distances. The planet's magnetic field itself became a weapon, creating electromagnetic pulses that disrupted entire sections of the Kethvar fleet. "My God," Elena whispered. "The entire solar system is a weapon." The tide of battle began to turn. Despite their overwhelming numbers, the Kethvar found themselves facing a coordinated defense that had been 50,000 years in the making. Every asteroid, every planet, every artificial structure worked together with the precision of a vast machine. But the Emperor was not finished. His flagship began to transform, revealing its true nature as something that was part ship, part creature, and part living weapon. Biomechanical tendrils, hundreds of kilometers long, reached out to drain energy from nearby stars, while weapon systems that defied physics began charging for what was clearly meant to be a final devastating attack. "He's drawing power from the sun," Torres reported in horror. "If he completes that charging sequence, he could sterilize the entire system." Sarah looked at Admiral Pierce's image on her communication screen. "Admiral, what are our options?" Pierce's expression was grim. "There is one possibility, but it would require a sacrifice that—" He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "Commander, the Guardian vessels are more than ships. They are the preserved consciousness of entire civilizations. If we were to merge all 18 vessels into a single entity, the combined power might be enough to stop the Emperor." "What's the catch?" Sarah asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "The merge process would consume the life force of everyone aboard the Guardian vessels, including the deep command crews that have maintained them for 50 millennia. We would essentially be trading the lives of millions to save billions." Sarah stared at the tactical display, watching as the Emperor's weapon continued to charge. Around them, the battle raged on, but she could see that even with all their preparations, humanity was losing. The Kethvar Empire had simply conquered too many worlds, absorbed too many technologies. But then Elena spoke up, her voice filled with sudden excitement. "Wait, Sarah, what if we don't have to choose? What if there's a third option?" "What are you thinking?" Elena's fingers flew over her instruments as she pulled up data from the ongoing battle. "Look at this. Every time the Guardian vessels use their reality-bending weapons, they're creating small tears in space-time. And every time the Emperor draws power from the sun, he's creating gravitational anomalies. What if we could synchronize these effects?" Admiral Pierce's voice cut in urgently. "Dr. Vasquez, what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we use the Emperor's own weapon against him," Elena said. "If we time it right, we might be able to create a localized space-time collapse that would trap his flagship in a pocket dimension. We wouldn't destroy him, but we could remove him from our reality entirely." Sarah felt a surge of hope. "What would you need?" "Perfect timing from all 18 Guardian vessels and—" Elena paused, her expression growing troubled. "And someone would need to get close enough to the Emperor's flagship to create a resonance cascade in his power collection system." The implication hung in the air like a death sentence. Someone would have to fly directly into the teeth of the most powerful weapon ever created, with no hope of survival. "I'll do it," Sarah said without hesitation. "Commander, no," Torres protested. "There has to be another way." But Sarah was already moving toward the Defiance's launch bay. "This is what we signed up for when we joined the Terran Defense Force. Elena, can you modify our ship systems to create the resonance cascade?" "Already working on it," Elena replied, her voice thick with emotion. As Sarah prepared for what was almost certainly a suicide mission, Admiral Pierce's voice came over the communication system one final time. "Commander Chen, on behalf of both branches of humanity, thank you. The children of Earth will remember your sacrifice." Sarah strapped herself into the pilot's seat of her ship as Elena finished the modifications. Around them, the 18 Guardian vessels began to move into position, their ancient crews preparing to synchronize technologies that had been created by the greatest minds in galactic history. "Elena, are you ready?" Sarah asked. "Resonance Cascade is armed and ready." "Sarah, it's been an honor serving with you." Sarah took a deep breath and launched the Defiance toward the Emperor's flagship, racing against time to save not just humanity, but the very fabric of reality itself. The final gambit was about to begin. Epilogue. The New Dawn 3 months. After the Battle of Sol, Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity Station, watching as human ships moved freely between the surface world and the ocean cities. The merger of the two branches of humanity had created wonders that neither could have achieved alone. She was alive, though she still wasn't entirely sure how. The resonance cascade had worked perfectly, at the moment of maximum synchronization. Between the Guardian fleet and the Emperor's solar weapon, space-time had indeed collapsed around the Kethvar flagship. The massive vessel, along with the Emperor himself, had been pulled into a pocket dimension from which there was no return. But the space-time distortion had also created what Elena called a probability bubble, a region where normal causality broke down. In that impossible moment, Sarah's ship had been both destroyed and not destroyed, both killed and not killed. When reality reasserted itself, she had found herself alive in the wreckage of her ship, floating in space near the spot where the Emperor's flagship had vanished. The rest of the Kethvar fleet, deprived of their Emperor's leadership and horrified by his apparent destruction, had retreated beyond the galaxy's edge. Long-range sensors suggested they were in chaos, with various factions fighting each other for control of what remained of their empire. Still trying to understand what happened out there? Dr. Elena Vasquez asked, as she joined Sarah at the observation window. Elena had been promoted to head of the new Joint Science Council, overseeing the integration of surface human technology with the preserved knowledge of the Deep Command. "I keep thinking about what the Emperor said," Sarah replied. "About knowing the predecessor's weaknesses. What if he was right? What if everything we did was predicted, planned for?" Elena smiled. "You mean, what if the entire 50,000-year plan was actually a trap for the Emperor himself?" "It's possible, isn't it? The predecessor council could predict large-scale galactic patterns. What if they knew that the only way to truly defeat the Kethvar was to lure their Emperor into a position where he could be removed from reality entirely?" "Admiral Pierce thinks you might be right," Elena admitted. "The more we study the ancient records, the more it seems like every detail of the plan was designed to create exactly the circumstances we encountered." Sarah turned away from the window to look at her friend. Elena had changed since the battle, as had they all. The integration with Deep Command technology had enhanced human capabilities in ways that were still being discovered. Elena's eyes now held flecks of the same bioluminescence that characterized the ocean dwellers, and her mind could interface directly with computer systems in ways that bordered on telepathy. "And what do you think?" Sarah asked. "I think," Elena said slowly, "that it doesn't matter whether we were following a plan or improvising desperately. What matters is that we won. Humanity survived, and not just survived. We've become something greater than either branch could have achieved alone." Through the observation window, they could see the transformation that was taking place throughout the solar system. Mars was being terraformed using both surface technology and Deep Command environmental control systems. The asteroid belt was becoming a vast manufacturing complex that would soon produce ships capable of exploring other galaxies. And Earth itself was revealing new wonders daily, as the integration between surface and ocean civilizations continued. But perhaps the most significant change was in humanity itself. The genetic differences between the surface dwellers and the Deep Command were being studied and selectively integrated. Children were being born who could breathe both air and water, who could interface with technology through thought alone, who carried within their DNA the preserved memories of a dozen extinct species. "Commander," a familiar voice called out. Admiral Pierce approached them, though he looked different now. The integration process had reversed some of the adaptations that 50,000 years beneath the ocean had created. He appeared younger, more like the surface humans he had once been related to. "Admiral," Sarah replied. "How goes the integration?" "Better than we dared hope," Pierce said. "The ocean cities are sharing their agricultural techniques with the surface world. We may be able to feed a population 10 times larger than current numbers. Meanwhile, surface manufacturing techniques are allowing us to construct new Guardian vessels at a rate we never thought possible." Sarah nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "Admiral, I've been thinking about the future. The Kethvar Empire is in chaos, but they're not gone, and there might be other threats out there. Other empires that see a unified humanity as a challenge to their dominance." Pierce's expression grew serious. "You're thinking we need to be proactive rather than reactive." "Exactly," Sarah said. "For 50,000 years, humanity hid and prepared for one specific threat. But now we're free to explore, to grow, to become something the galaxy has never seen before. The question is, what do we become?" Elena looked thoughtful. "The predecessor records mention something called the Great Project, a plan to seed the galaxy with civilizations that could resist tyranny and promote cooperation between species. Maybe that's our destiny now. Maybe." Pierce agreed. But first, we need to learn to be human again. All of us. The surface dwellers need to remember that they're part of a larger galactic community. The Deep Command needs to remember what it's like to hope for the future rather than simply preparing for war. As if summoned by their conversation, an alarm chimed softly throughout the station. But this wasn't a battle alarm. It was the signal for a scheduled event that had become one of Sarah's favorite parts of the new world. "Time for the ceremony," Elena said with a smile. They made their way to the central amphitheater of Unity Station, where representatives from both surface and ocean civilizations had gathered. Today marked the launch of the first joint exploration mission to another galaxy, a ship that combined the best of both human civilizations and was crewed by volunteers from every corner of Earth. Sarah watched as Captain Maria Santos, a surface dweller who had undergone partial integration with Deep Command technology, took command of the exploration vessel New Horizon. The ship itself was a marvel, sleek like a surface design but incorporating the organic curves and living systems of the ocean cities. Today, Captain Santos announced to the assembled crowd, humanity takes its first step into the greater galaxy not as refugees or defenders but as explorers and builders. We carry with us the knowledge of the predecessors, the innovation of the surface world, and the patience of the deep dwellers. But most importantly, we carry the dream of a galaxy where cooperation triumphs over conquest. As the New Horizon departed the station, Sarah felt a sense of completion that she hadn't experienced since before the war. The desperate struggle for survival was over. The long wait was ended. Now came the hardest part of all, learning to live with hope. "Commander," Admiral Pierce said quietly, "I have a proposition for you." Sarah turned to look at him. "Oh?" "The Joint Council has approved the construction of a new class of exploration vessels, ships that will seek out other survivors of the Kethvar conquests, worlds that might be ready to join a new galactic confederation. We need someone to command the flagship of this new fleet." Sarah felt her heart quicken. "Admiral, are you offering me a promotion?" "I'm offering you the chance to do what you were meant to do," Pierce replied. "You're an explorer, Sarah, a xenoarchaeologist who helped save 2 civilizations. The galaxy is full of mysteries and humanity needs someone who can solve them." Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking of all the worlds that might be out there. Civilizations that had hidden from the Kethvar, species that had been enslaved and could now be freed, ancient ruins that might hold the keys to technologies beyond imagination. "When do we launch?" she asked. Pierce smiled. "As soon as you're ready, Admiral Chen." Sarah blinked in surprise. "Admiral?" "The promotion is effective immediately," Pierce said. "Congratulations, Sarah. You've earned it." As Sarah stood there, surrounded by the representatives of 2 branches of humanity that had become one, she realized that the war had not just been about survival, it had been about transformation. The desperate fight against the Kethvar had forged humanity into something new, something that could stand as guardians of the galaxy, protectors of the weak, and explorers of the infinite. The Dreadnoughts that had emerged from Earth's oceans had been impressive, but they were just machines. The real weapon that had defeated the Kethvar Empire was the human spirit, the refusal to give up, the willingness to sacrifice for others, and the courage to hope for something better. And now, as humanity prepared to take its place among the stars, Sarah knew that the greatest adventures were yet to come. Outside the station's windows, the 18 Guardian vessels hung in formation, no longer weapons of war but symbols of protection and exploration. Soon they would spread throughout the galaxy, carrying the message that Earth had once received from the ancient predecessors, that intelligence and cooperation could triumph over tyranny and fear. The war was over. The future had begun, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what it meant to be human. The end.